Hello, my name is Kezia Hector, and today I will be interviewing my dad on his book, It's Easy So I Can Quit Making Things Difficult. So, first question, what inspired you to write this book?
Well, first, thank you for doing the interview with me. Thank you so much. What inspired me to write this book was basically seeing my life and the career that I've had and the influences of individuals that I've had on my life, and being in a setting where I'm around young people because I'm a higher education administrator. And over time, it's this thing about giving back. And I've been blessed to be in a strong household and just wanted to share a little bit of what I've learned. But more importantly, is an experience I had going to Howard University and learning and teaching and training under Coach William P. Moultrie. He always had these simple phrases that seemed to be so akin to common sense that as we try to make life so difficult, I always go back to what he used to say. So simple, so easy, so relatable. And it just stuck with me. And over the years, when I see things happen, this kind of sense that, hey, you need to say something, always was with me. And it got louder and it got stronger. And I would see things and I said, one day I want to say something but not offend anyone. So the best way to do it is to write a book and see what will happen. And over time, just the things that Coach Moultrie shared with us came back to memory. And I decided to write a book based on my experiences at Howard and using those stories as metaphors to explain this concept of common sense that I think I needed to share, or I wanted to share rather. So that's how I came about writing the book.
You mentioned how part of your inspiration came from working in higher education. Why now, as you have been working in higher education for quite some time? So why release the book now? Why not prior?
Well, it's not just higher education, it's just life in general, because we see what is happening. And you hear people say all the time, common sense is not that common. And when you look around what's happening in our world today, we are so educated, we're so advanced in our thought, in our tools, in the things that we have in a 21st century existence, but we still can't get out of our own way. We keep making the same mistakes over and over again. And when you look at the solutions to what are some of our issues, it just requires some simple things, real simple things like having compassion for others, seeing someone in need and trying to help that person in need, not being so greedy, not being so selfish. In an environment that we're in today where you see people trying to turn the clock back in terms of race relations, in terms of just trying to live life, you have to ask yourself, if we have all of this education, all of this technology, all of these modern things, and we're still stuck in a first century mindset. Look at what's happening in the country today, the world today. We're in the midst of a pandemic. And we seemingly can't solve it because we can't get out of our own way. So as I sit there and I look at it, it's to just get back to basics, simple things like having courage, having compassion, walking a mile in someone else's shoes, understanding the lived experiences of others. Sometimes in our hustle and bustle and the speed at which we're moving, we just overlook it. And I'm trying to get young people who are looking at the chaos, so to speak, and get them to be inspired and motivated behind the fact, hey, look, there is a simple way to go through this life and getting it done. And that's why I believe the book came forward at this time. I will say this book has been in 10 years in the making. And I've been writing it, putting it down, writer's block, things come up, life happen. Raising you and your brothers, that's part of the equation. But at one time, I actually lost the entire manuscript on a jump drive. And I said to myself, oh, well, there goes this book plan. No reason to do it. So 10 years. And you guys know I'm a spiritual person and a faith-based individual. And nothing happens before its time. So as this book has been released, it's been released at a time when we all need to look back at common sense and apply some common sense to our existence. So, it came out in October of last year, and look at what has happened since then. We are now in the midst of a pandemic, economic crisis globally. But at the end of the day, if we sat still and just see the things that we have in front of us, we should be in good shape. So that's why I think the book is timely, and that's why the feedback and the responses that I've gotten to the book have ran a broad spectrum from young teenagers to young professionals to wiser individuals, even up to CEO level. So I've been humbled by that, but I think the timing was perfect, and here we are today.
Speaking on the feedback that you have received from the younger audience, what have they gotten out of the book, and is it different from what you had wanted them to get out of the book?
Good question. From the young people or the parents of young people, what they have shared is that it is so simple. The metaphor of a star apple tree and trying to get at the star apple and not being able to obtain it, understanding that there are things that society teaches us that we hold on to, and we hold on to them for so long, but we never open our minds to see things from a different perspective. So we are told from we're in this world that you do these things in lockstep, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in a logical flow and sequence. Well, what I have discovered, and many of my readers have basically shared, is life doesn't happen in locksteps. There are no linear paths that you take in your life. Your life is going to go through ups, downs. You're going to go sideways. You're going to get depressed. You're going to get some highs, some lows. But it's the consistency of life that I think most of them have seen. So when I talk about the chapter titles, like, young people today will get this sense that they always have to do this thing this way. And one of the chapters says, son, experts are everywhere but on the track. It was really saying there are folks that sit on the sideline and have never attempted anything, but they have the most advice to give you. When we talk about some days you're the bug, some days you're the windshield, you have a perspective to understand that some days you're going to be successful and some days you're going to fail. But if you're going to fail forward. And I think just them hearing those messages that, look, people before you have ran into brick walls. They have people lie on them. They have been betrayed. They have been mocked. They've been teased. But they still come out okay. I think that's encouraging for some of them. And for the star apple metaphor and my experiences running track and playing golf and doing all these types of things, it just gave them some sense of, if I am to just kind of slow down a little bit and try to live rather than existing based on what folks say are the parameters in which I got to exist, I think they're seeing that there's some freedom there, that their expressions and their thoughts do have value, but it just might be in a different context. So I think that is part of what they're getting out of it, and I'm humbled by the fact from the feedback that I've gotten.
Why did you choose to frame all of this advice through sports and sports metaphors?
Wow, good question. I framed it through sports and sports metaphors because sports is pretty much what I've been doing all my life. For example, when I got to Howard University, on a track and field scholarship from Coach Moultrie. And that was kind of what paid for my education. My legs paid for my education. That's what I tell people all the time. But I use the metaphors with sports and Coach Moultrie's teachings in sports, these quirky sayings that he had, because sports teaches us values. It teaches us values of teamwork. It teaches us values of hard work. It also teaches you how to win and how to lose gracefully. It gives you discipline. And quite honestly, it gives you a lens through which the problems that you face in your life you can overcome. So you can control. The only thing that you can control, Coach Lennox Graham says this sometimes, the only thing you can control is what you put in. And what I tried to do with the book is to lift up these things or stories around common sense and the star apple tree, is to remind people that we are innately gifted with the ability to solve problems, the ability to see things, look at how others have overcome it, mirror what they have done, but put your own spin on it. And sports is like that. It's a lot of trial and error, and it's life. So the metaphor of sports for me was very, very strong and very, very powerful. And that's why I used it in the book. You know, I am a higher ed educator, and I'm an accountant, and I write white papers and articles on finances and accounting and stuff like that, but it can become rather boring and technical. So what I was trying to do is to hold the reader's attention, and I think I have been able to do that just with using sports and Coach Moultrie, because the book really focuses on Coach Moultrie, a legendary track and field coach, football coach at Stanford, coached 2 Rose Bowls champions. So sports was just a good angle and a good hook for the book, and it seemed to have scored the right points. So I'm just grateful and thankful for that.
So we don't want to give away too much because we want people to actually read the book, but is there any particular chapter or part of the book that you would say is your favorite?
Wow, good question. I love all the chapters, but the one that sticks out the most for me is around the story where I actually shouted at Coach and thought I had lost my scholarship. And that day I was so panicked because if I had lost my scholarship, there was no way I could afford to graduate Howard University, which was my ultimate goal. So that chapter, I won't give the title or anything, but that story reminds me of the simple fact that we have to have respect at all times for our elders. People who are watching us from a distance. So you live this life and you're not living your life for yourself. I'll give you a good example. Bob Marley, when I was a youngster, I did an interview and he said, in Jamaican patois, he said, "If my life are just for me alone, then me no want it." That has always stuck with me because I'm realizing now, the wiser or older that I get, it is really, truly better to give than to receive. The satisfaction that comes from that. But when you are in a space and time where you have eyes on you at all time, if it's in your career, if you're an athlete, if you're moving up the corporate ladder, there are people always having their eyes on you, and you have to be in a mode to be consistent in the witness that you put out. Excellence is a habit. Coach Graham again, I'll quote Coach Graham again, where he says, "Excellence does not tolerate mediocrity." Now, why do I say that from that story? Because one, I could have easily lost my scholarship, but two, Coach Moultrie turns to me and says, "That's the response I wanted from you. So it tells me you have the fire in your belly." And for young people today, the fire that's in your belly is the fire that's going to take you to your purpose. So this book has spawned or birthed, so to speak, a podcast, and I'm up to 12 interviews now. And what's interesting with the podcast, the feedback that I get from the podcast, is the guests that have been on the show thus far. If you take a dispassionate view and listen to what they're truly saying, it's the fire in their belly that caused them to overcome racism, segregation, setbacks, and such. So that's my favorite story. The chapters are all good in my mind. That's kind of biased. But that story is a reminder for me that I can always overcome and I can always succeed.
Okay, well, those are all the questions that I have for you today. So Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time. No problem. Love you, baby girl. Thank you. Bye.